everyone, and welcome once again to one of our Hobby Memorial Library events. And we are with our favorite partners ever, the Fort Hood Directorate of Public Works guys. Yay! We have Christine Luciano and Jackie Ferrara, and they're going to talk to us about wildlife and birds. And they're getting to be a real pro. And we're so sad we're at the end of the year because
It
we've
just
had
means
such
many more
fun.
new adventures for the new
Next
year.
year.
Yes, definitely. Just start putting it on your calendars that what you want to come talk to us with. But I'm going to
Yes.
go ahead and let you guys tell us all about urban wildlife and the Christmas bird count. So take it away,
Awesome.
guys.
So I'm Christine. I'm with the Fort Hood Environmental Division as the Outreach Coordinator, and we have Jackie, who's the Sustainability Program Manager. So we're going to get started on the slide deck right here. So give me a moment. Okay, so we're going to start with discussing about urban wildlife. We just want to educate the community about what is urban wildlife and what to expect when you're out and about. So, when you go for a walk, you hike, or you go for a bike ride in your neighborhood, you might not expect to meet a deer, a rabbit, or a bat. And although most wildlife occurs in natural areas, some do find their ways into urban areas. And these animals are referred to as urban wildlife. So that can include anything like coyotes, deers, snakes, bats, raccoons, skunks, and they're drawn to many different landscape features that increase the livability for people, but also play an important role in sustaining native wildlife populations. So, communities are built in close proximity to features that are important to wildlife. And so, urban development can fragment larger habitat areas, and these urban areas contain a key natural areas and features that are drawn to wildlife. So, what urban wildlife rely on four key things: space, food, water, and shelter. So these animals are making their homes in lots of places and sometimes even in your own backyard. So having wild animals in cities and towns is sometimes okay, but sometimes it's not. So we're going to discuss more about urban wildlife. It's because, especially as Texans, we enjoy being outside. We enjoy wildlife on a daily basis. So whether it's anything from birds to dragonflies to during your daily commute to work, there are chances you're going to encounter some type of wildlife in every community across the state. So this wildlife, though, while a valuable and educational part of our communities, they can often lead to concerns and even complaints. So there are some simple things that you can do to minimize your concerns and those of your neighbors while still enjoying the Texas wildlife. So we want to discuss, with urban wildlife when it comes to deer. So, as we discuss each of these animals, we just want to let you know that no matter what, as a general rule, it's very important to never touch or harass any type of wildlife. Never try to rescue wildlife on your own. Remember, it's far more likely you'll have a safe experience when you see an animal and not an unsafe one. So here are some things you need to know when you're encountering these examples. So, in some parts of the state, deer have become overabundant. One of the symptoms common with this condition is that deer begin moving into areas that they traditionally avoid. So, suburban landscapes and urban green belts. This presents a number of safety issues. And if you've lived in Texas a while, you see them on the road on your commutes, especially in the evening. So, this could cause collisions with automobiles. It's very common. Deer also carry many parasites like ticks, which carry dangerous pathogens that can also lead to Lyme disease in humans. So every year, deer have babies called fawns, and this creates an issue as deer live well alongside humans in urban areas. So the mother deer or the doe, they have their babies, they leave them in certain areas where they feel the fawn is going to be safe. Well, when they leave so that they graze, so not to draw any type of attention to the fawn. So it's not uncommon not to see mama deer for, 12 to 24 hours. And so we just want to remind community, if you see a fawn, just never handle a fawn. Wait 24 hours before you call a certified wildlife rehab individual professional who can help assess the situation and see if maybe the fawn is injured or there's other proactive steps that that professional can do to move forward. So and these situations can be reduced by following a few simple guidelines that we just want to remind the community, so that deer can be less attractive into certain urban areas. So feeding deer is never a good idea, especially when they become a community hazard. So another frequent consequence of having an overabundant population of deer involves landscape damage. So they get drawn to certain particular plants, so you can explore the National Plant Society page, and they will provide a list of native plants that will be less attractive to deer, but also be helpful for your community and for your landscape. So, by also carefully fencing your plants, this can also deter the deer from coming into your footprint. So, many of us are fascinated by birds, and often that fascination leads us to inviting birds to be closer to our homes by offering, housing opportunities with the form, of nest spots for our bird watching opportunities. But there's some things that we should consider when we're trying to attract birds to our property. We have to consider their safety and their health. That is key. So feeders, nest boxes that are intended for birds need to be kept clean, safe, and available for our feathered guests. So foods that you select, do your research to make sure that you have reliable food, that source is clean and dry. You want to make sure when you're storing your food that you keep it in an area that it does not get wet. Otherwise, when that food gets wet, it can get mold, and then it can harbor other pathogens that can be deadly to birds. So you also want to make sure that these apparatuses that the birds are using, that you want to make sure that you keep them clean too. Keeping those feeders clean will help with the birds, with their health, and also avoid trying to throw the bird feed onto the ground. Otherwise, that's going to attract other urban wildlife and rodents into your footprint. So one of the other things when it comes to birds and you're feeding birds in your backyard, there's sometimes you get complaints about hawks visiting the bird feeders. And one of the common hawks in the area is the red-tailed hawk, that actually are commonly nesting on roofs or on the side of tall buildings. But you have to remember that these hawks play an important role of our ecosystem, keeping rodent and bird populations healthy and under control. So, like many North American birds, they are federally protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act also, and so they cannot be harassed or harmed in any way. But if you should have a consistent problem with your bird feeders, then we recommend that the safest control measure is to remove the source of food by removing the feeder and luring those birds into other areas so that the hawks can move on. So, excuse me. So one of the other items that we want to talk about are snakes. So there's some key things we want you to remember. Throughout the state of Texas, there's about 15 different types of species and subspecies of venomous snakes in the state. But a vast majority of them, more than 100 of these snakes, are not venomous and present little or no threat to people and pets. So, venomous or not, snakes play an important role in our ecosystem in helping to keep rodent and insect populations in check, and you should not destroy them for any reason. These encounters help to be minimized by proper landscaping your area with proper maintenance, minimizing any type of shelter by keeping brush, rock piles, wood piles that would be frequent areas for them to seek shelter. Controlling rodent populations by making food sources harder for them to access and avoiding, like we mentioned with the birds, any type of ground feeding. So taking these simple steps will help to greatly reduce the probability of encountering snake in your footprint. And most of the snakes you encounter will be trying to get away out versus just hanging out in your backyard. So a snake that takes a defensive posture is just probably surprised and just feels corner and will just move away if given the opportunity. So Texas happens to be one of the fattiest state in the country. It's home to 32 of 47 bat species found across the US. And not only does it hold the distinction of having the most kind of bats, it also boasts the largest bat colony in the world at the Bracken Cave Preserve near San Antonio. And it's the largest urban bat colony at Congress Avenue in Austin. So visitors from around the world come out and they flock to Texas to visit our bats, to enjoy the public viewing of them as they're migrating through these areas. One of the common bats, most common ones that you'll see in this area is the Mexican free-tailed bats that are found throughout the state. So they migrate and spend their winters in Mexico, and they begin their migration to Texas in February. And early spring, the female bats form large maternity colonies where they will raise their young. So there are only a small number of suitable sites for these large maternity colonies because the bats require high humidity and temperature levels. So in June, in the springtime as they're migrating, in the summertime, you'll see these mother bats give birth to one pup each. So male bats do not help raising the young and form smaller bachelor colonies away from the female. So bats are mammals, so the pups are born to live and weigh about 25% of their mother's weight. They feed from their mother's rich milk under each of her wings. And by early August, these pups are ready to go flying and foraging on their own. And we just want you to remember that bats play a very beneficial role to our ecosystem. A single bat can eat up to 1,200 insects in one night. So if you see a bat outside your building, don't touch it, don't harass it, leave it on its own, and it will likely leave during the evening hours. So if you see a bat inside your building, open the door, open the window so that it can try to leave the room. If it's on the ground, place a box on it and call a certified rehab specialist who can come and provide assistance. And we just want to remind individuals that killing bats is illegal. So don't kill them, never touch them. And if a bat or its blood or saliva makes contact with you, make sure to go to the emergency room immediately. So urban wildlife like skunks, possums, raccoons are often referred to as varmints or as pests. And we just want to remind you that these animals do not make good pets. Rabies remains one of the biggest issues with these animals as well. So moving or selling raccoons within the state or to and from Texas is prohibited under their rabies quarantine. Skunks are one of the most known carriers of rabies. Possums seem to be resistant, although they can occasionally contract the disease. So controlling these animals in urban environments is dependent on carefully cleaning up, securing all food sources, including your pet's food. And if you feed your animals outdoors and your animal doesn't eat all of it, make sure to clean it up so that you can avoid those animals coming into your footprint. These animals are notorious for getting on your homes, into your attics, and they often result in damage to your electrical wiring and other facilities. So, prevent this, make sure you screen all open areas that could be accessed from outside. So what are some things that you can do to help with urban wildlife? So, common things that you can help with urban wildlife and also with conservation is, number one, do not litter. Many types of litter can be harmful to animals, to the environment. For example, discarded gum has been known to kill birds. Animals become entangled in six-pack rings. Any type of discarded food can be eaten by wild animals. And we want to make sure that we help them to do their best to be on a natural diet for items that they would have in their natural environment. The other thing is, if you're going outdoors and exploring a park, stick to official trails, any type of shortcuts or social trails or informal paths not only disturb animals, especially those who are breeding, but they can also cause habitat fragmentation. And so when a habitat becomes fragmented by a new path, it opens it up to other predators, invasive plants and animals, and parasites. So that can make the habitat less useful for these native animals. And the other thing is enjoy wildlife from a distance. We can't emphasize it enough that the general rule is to be safe, that never get too close to wildlife. Also, don't try to catch or remove animals from their home. It's illegal and it's wrong to do. They're not domestic and they do not make good pets. So, and can take very extremely difficult to care for. And the last one is consider doing your part to help promote conservation by volunteering in your local parks, in your local municipality, whether that's with a cleanup, a planting, so that you can help promote green spaces. So this concludes our presentation on urban wildlife, and we're going to transition to the next presentation, discuss about the Christmas bird count and how you can get involved with that. Oops, sorry, we have slight technical error on my part. Okay, we're going to make that transition.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jacqueline Ferrier, Sustainability Program Manager for Fort Hood, and I am going to chat real quick about Christmas bird counts, a little bit about the Fort Hood Christmas bird count, and if you're interested in having your own Christmas bird count, how you can also set up your own, or you can participate in a Christmas bird count that's near you. So some of the topics that we're going to bounce around in is what is a Christmas bird count, the history, how it started, how the data is used now, how to do your own CBC successfully and safely. And then we'll go through a couple of frequently asked questions for individuals that are interested in either participating or hosting their own Christmas bird count, or maybe you can come on Fort Hood and join us for ours. Okay, so what is a Christmas bird count? A Christmas bird count is basically a census of avian species, bird species in a given area. So the Christmas bird count occurs within a large 15-mile radius circle. So you have to count all the birds within this circle on a given day. And so you select a day between mid-December and early January. It has to be one day only for the main Christmas bird count. And within those 24 hours, you count birds within that 15-mile circle. You reach out to volunteers and you try to get some people to participate so that you don't have to cover the area all alone. It's pretty hard to do, large area to cover. And so I'll go into how you can set up your own circle. So real quick before I move on, the Christmas bird count's been around for a really, really long time. It started as a side hunt over 120 years ago. And so on Christmas Day in the year 1900, several individuals got together and decided to count birds rather than hunt birds. And so because at that time frame, conservation was starting to become a very big concern of many people that were very passionate about wildlife, and many species were beginning to become extinct, many bird species also. So instead of going out and hunting, they decided to go out and count the birds. And so on that day, that marked the very beginning first Christmas bird count by 27 volunteers, dedicated birders that went out and counted birds, ranging in areas from Ontario, Canada, all the way to California. Now, the Christmas bird count occurs in places all around the globe. One great resource that you can look into so that you can get an idea of where a count circle is or where the other count circles are and how large the project is. You can go on the Audubon website and there's actually a map that you can pull up and see all of the count circles that have existed and that are active today. So how does participation work on the day of the Christmas bird count? So we'll go into some steps here on how to host a safe and successful CBC. And CBC is a term that's used interchangeably with Christmas bird count. So if you want to have your own Christmas bird count circle, the first very important step, it's not listed here, you have to go on to the Audubon website to register your circle with the Audubon Society directly. And so there's a couple of links and resources on there. If you Google a Christmas bird count, the Audubon Society website will come up. There's an area called compiler resources. And so if you want to host your own Christmas bird count, every circle has to have a count circle compiler, which is basically the host of the event and the person that keeps track of all of the data collected on that day. And this person may also be in charge of kind of coordinating and getting participants together. And so there's a link on the Audubon website, the Audubon Society webpage for compilers specifically, and you will find absolutely everything you need to host your own Christmas bird count on that website. So just a couple of, I guess, expert tips and tricks just to have a successful CBC. If you want to host your own, you can promote it through local news outlets and social media web pages. Christine is in charge of our DPW web pages and our recycle web pages, and we also have a great web page. It's called the Adaptive and Integrative Management Team here on Fort Hood, and they have a wonderful web page that talks about all of the different activities that occur here on Fort Hood. And that's really, all of those ways to communicate with the public are really what we use to kind of leverage opportunities to get the word out there and get more and garner more participation. When you're going to start your first Christmas bird count, one important thing that you'd like to have is some people there that are experienced birders. And so these individuals could be team leads. They could lead people into designated count areas. They can easily identify bird species. And so you can get that first bird count started strong. And they can also help teach novice participants. The Christmas bird count is the longest citizen science project in the world, longest running citizen science project in the world, being around almost 122 years. So for the count, you want to make sure that you include people that have no experience whatsoever and people that are experts, and so we can continue that tradition and hand down that information as the years go on. So contact your local Audubon Society. You can go on the Audubon website and see where the other count circles are near you and contact those individuals so they can help you build your new Christmas bird count circle. You can involve university students. And so the very first time we had a Christmas bird count here on Fort Hood in 2016, we had a ton of help from university students and college students in the local area that came out and walked through the areas here on Fort Hood with us. And so that was a great resource. And it became a tradition. It became an annual tradition for local science clubs and university students to come out around Christmas time and count birds on Fort Hood. You can encourage your participants to use eBird. So now eBird is separate from the Audubon Society website. It is a huge data center for avian species globally. It's a great resource if you want to come up with if you want to print out a list of birds that you would typically see in your area. This is a great website to go to. You just put in where you live and they can generate a list for you, and you can keep track of all the avian species that you document, not just for the Christmas bird count, but whenever you're just in your backyard watching your feeders, you can use this website to track all of your observations. And so we encourage people to use eBird to catalog their data for the Christmas bird count. You also have to turn in your data to the Audubon Society website. So this gives you an opportunity to share this important and vital data of migratory birds across a large area on 2 platforms versus just sharing it on one. And all this data is used for, there's been over 300 peer-reviewed articles published from Christmas bird count data alone. So that's just something that you can contribute to and help continue so that we can find new and emerging ways to conserve our avian species. Number 5, very important, create detailed maps. And it sounds like something very simple and something that anybody would think of, but creating maps is a very valuable thing. And further into the presentation, we'll talk a little bit about the way Fort Hood kind of does things, and you'll see why creating detailed maps for your participants is so important. And it also helps you as the compiler to keep track of areas in a more organized way. We also like to provide educational gifts for volunteers that come and participate. And so we'll host lunches for individuals that participate. We'll also provide goodie bags. And this providing these gifts, educational gifts, it gives you an opportunity to encourage participation for the years to come. It gives you an opportunity to share information about your area, about projects on Fort Hood and other outreach opportunities. And it's just fun. An example of one of the things we had in one of our bags is a Christmas ornament with some information inside that is specific to Christmas bird counts on Fort Hood. We give out seeds. We give out information about other species of concern. So it's just another way to kind of encourage participation. So the following slides were created by Charlie Plimpton, and he's a biologist, an avian biologist on the Adaptive and Integrative Management team. And they do an amazing job of hosting the Christmas bird count on Fort Hood every year. And so this is some information about the Christmas bird count in 2016. So what they do is they have an outreach event with the public. It's called Count Week. Now, this is not an official Christmas bird count. This is just a count week, and this data is also utilized. It's utilized in a different way. Kind of gives you an idea of how to prepare for your Christmas bird count. Maybe you can go into some areas and plan on. It'll give you an idea of what areas you should go to if you want to count specific species. So it's kind of like a prep work. But the species, counted on during the count week it's utilized in a different manner from the CBC. So for this, they had about 10 to 20 individuals last year. For the official Christmas bird count, the number of volunteers really has varied throughout the years. We've had anywhere from 10 to 40 participants come out for the official Christmas bird count. We like to make sure that the participants are familiar with the area. That way everybody can participate in the safest way possible. So as I mentioned earlier about detailed maps, and here's a map of the Christmas bird count circle of Fort Hood. The different areas, the different color shading of the areas are different zones that are assigned to the participants. Just a visual way of being able to kind of know where you are, maintain a certain level of organization of all of the data that you're going to compile. And so there's a variety of areas that you can go to with the different types of habitats so that you can count different types of avian species. So the 2021 event had a couple of components to it. And Christine's going to kind of go over how that went.
So we're always looking for opportunities to involve our outreach opportunities, our events, and engage the community. So something new that we did is we had a very competitive style event, and we split the volunteers into two separate groups. So they were in two different designated areas, and we were competing to see which team would count the highest number of individual birds for the outreach event. So, this is a fun way to get families excited, from the experience to the novice birders, to just encourage them to be outdoors and hopefully entice them to come back up to Fort Hood to participate in this annual event, or maybe start a family tradition of themselves with their friends and getting outdoors and participating in their own Christmas bird count. And, we rely on volunteers from the community. As Jackie said, when we started this Christmas bird count in 2016,
Yes.
Texas A&M University, Central Texas, we worked with their science students, and they have continued to be very supportive of the Fort Hood AIM team and the Fort Hood Environmental Division and helping with our outreach opportunities. And when we also have local businesses like Wild Birds Unlimited from Temple that assist us, this helps us to have a successful event. So, when you're hosting your own event, if you were trying to do something maybe on a larger scale or partnering with a college or a school, explore other businesses with the same likeness for the same passion and see if they can get involved too, just to build those relationships. So, we went outdoors, we explored. Last year, we were outside for about 2 hours. And it's just amazing when you're exploring outdoors how that time goes by so quickly. So we had 25 participants, and it was a close call. And it's very exciting when you're tallying up the numbers and that you see that one team versus beat the other team by counting one additional bird. So, you know, collectively, we counted 97 individual birds, but we observed 60 different species across the Fort Hood habitat in just a 2-hour period, which was quite amazing. So here's some official count results that we had. There's 23 participants, 102 hours. So we have the outreach event that we just discussed, and then this is the official count. So this was the second highest ever, where our volunteers and our biologists and environmental staff observed 109 different species in one day. And in that same day, they individually counted 9,889 birds. And of course, with Texas weather, you just never know what it might be. I mean, just 2 days ago, the high was 80, and today the high is 50. And, you know, this event takes place traditionally the same time period, about the second week of December. And in the second week of December, it was a beautiful day, and it was in the 70s that day. So we're going to highlight some of the results with some of the species that were counted. And Jackie's more familiar with these species than I am as the biologist. So I'm gonna pass the baton to her so she can highlight some of these right here.
So I'm sure Charlie, or a member of the AIM team, compiled. Well, Charlie is a compiler for the Fort Hood Christmas Bird Count Circle, and so I'm sure that he put this fantastic list together. And so some of the new species counted for the first time last year. We had a Nashville warbler, a prairie falcon, a northern bobwhite, Woodhouse's scrub jay, and so some of these species are here during the other times of the year. It's just sometimes you'll have a very common, maybe somewhat of a common species that you kind of see on the day-to-day, and then it just so happens that on the Christmas count day, you just don't find it. So it's always nice to be able to add new species to that list, especially when you know that they occur here. So notable species that we didn't count: western meadowlark, a Say's phoebe, rock wren, burrowing owl, a greater roadrunner, and a variety of ducks, which I am terrible at identifying. So I'm pretty sure if anybody is interested and you're good at identifying ducks, please come out and help us this year, as we have our, how many years have we been?
Seventh year.
Seventh year Christmas bird count on Fort Hood. Okay, what do we have here? So this is just a running list of the species that were identified on that day. So we do write down the species name. These are the common names here. And we do a count of each individual one. So this gives you an idea of what the total species counts were in the previous years. And so the first year that we started, we counted a total of 87 species, which isn't too bad because I remember that day and the weather was not participating. So we were very, very proud to get our 87 species in 2016. And just to give you some idea of reference, the very first Christmas bird count that I talked about earlier that occurred on Christmas Day in 1900, they recorded a total of 90 species that day. And so we were on par with the very first Christmas bird count. So not too bad for our first Christmas bird count. So in 2017, 108 species, 2018, 103, 102, and then 2020, 127. So 147 species in 6 years. It's not too bad. So the highest counted species are listed here. And so these are the ones that you'll see more commonly in the wintertime in our area. And these are some of the rare birds that were counted. Some of these birds, we have some really amazing expert biologists go out there and look for these birds. And so we're very fortunate to have such a strong team here at Fort Hood to ID these rare avian species. When we have a lot of, one great thing about the Christmas bird count circle here on Fort Hood is that it covers such a wide variety of varying habitat types. And so because we have different habitat types within that circle, it gives us the opportunity to count a large variety of avian species that use different habitat types. And so we're not limited to just grassland species. We're not just limited to species that would be closer to bodies of water, because we have such a wide range. And so that's just something to think about whenever you're picking a location for your count circle. You want to make sure that you give yourself an opportunity to find those rare birds. Okay, so this is some more information about species encountered during the Christmas bird count. Species codes. And so future goals. And so we want to get more experienced birders out so that we can continue to find all those rare species and continue to compile all of this data for Fort Hood. And it gives us ways to, it gives us a certain level of awareness of what we have here on the installation so that we can improve our conservation efforts and set strong priorities in order to preserve our feathered friends. As an alternative, you may be interested in getting involved in the Great Backyard Bird Count that's also organized by the Audubon Society, but we do host one here on Fort Hood. And so in order to kind of stay informed on all of these opportunities with birds and a variety of other outreach events, you can go onto eBird, and you can also go onto our Facebook pages too. So the Adaptive and Integrative Management Fort Hood page on Facebook, and the DPW Fort Hood page, and the Fort Hood Recycle page. We like to support each other, and we'll list our events on there so that you can reach out to us and be a participant if you'd like. So please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to hear from you if you have any questions. Thank you.
That concludes our presentation.
Well, Alyssa, do they have any questions so far? Not yet. I have a question, and it's a very basic question. How do you know you're not counting the same bird 16 times?
That's an excellent question. So there's different methods of counting the bird species that are out there. So for instance, if we go into a grassland area and there's a flock of birds, we do have to do estimations of how many birds are in that particular flock. So some of the numbers are very much exact, and others are an estimation whenever we see groups of birds.
And the other thing is that we don't stay in one area the entire 2-hour period. So we're constantly transitioning to different habitat areas. We could be in a grassland area, we could be in a wetland area. So, this is a great opportunity for many of these, especially novice birders that are not familiar with the wide variety of landscapes on Fort Hood, to really experience that and see these birds in their different habitats.
Yeah, because I know with my backyard feeders, the same ones are coming back.
Yes.
Yes. And that's an excellent question. I mean, on a more specific research level, and this is a citizen science project, and so there's a little bit more flexibility with your data collection. But if you're doing a very targeted type of research, there are specific, I call them bird bling, but it's banding colors that you can use so that you can recognize individual birds by sight. So you don't, you're not counting the same individual more than once.
Well, I know you guys ban some of the birds, especially the ones that are endangered. So are you ever able to see those bans when you're out there doing this bird count?
So when I started on Fort Hood, 2008, I'm aging myself. I worked with David Simprich, the black cat vireo biologist, and he teaches his team how to ban birds, and he gives us different color combinations. And yes, you can. So if you're out there and you're trying to track your birds and you have your binoculars with you, you can, it takes a little bit of skill. There's a learning curve, but you can look through your binoculars and identify each individual bird by their color combination.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Mhm.
Well, now, so if someone, is watching this, are they able to be a volunteer, or does it have to be military related person?
So,
What can somebody in the
with
community
that
do?
map, so the Fort Hood Circle is a 15-mile circle. So, portions of the Fort Hood Christmas bird count actually include parts of Killeen. So you don't
Oh,
necessarily have to live on Fort Hood. Now, there are some Fort Hood communities that are within the circle that can collect data as part of the outreach event and share that information with our AIM team, and we will use that to push that forward. So, we will, as we get closer to the event, which is about 2 weeks away, we'll make sure to post that map, and we'll just encourage, individuals in their community, if they see a bird, share the information and email it to us so that we can include our account. But as Jackie mentioned, on a more smaller scale, if you feel overwhelming of like, I don't know anything about birds, and you enjoy being in your own space, then the Great Backyard Bird Count is an excellent event in February where you can do it at home, and especially if you have kids, and make it a family event and something to just encourage you to be involved in wildlife and conservation.
I do recommend if you don't already have a feeder in your backyard, I do recommend that you get that early. Sometimes birds have to become habituated to
mhm.
bird feeders, and so if you want to be a part of the Great Backyard Bird Count, it probably wouldn't be best if you bought it the day before. So if now is a great time to set up your bird feeders during the winter when birds are migrating and scavenging around for whatever food resources are available.
Well, and I have a question about bird feeders. Um, the little birds throw the stuff on the ground, and then you have 10,000 pigeons. I have a count of 10,000 pigeons. And what can you do about that?
I know it's tough in my backyard. I have a oh man a huge challenge with squirrels actually. So I try to as much as I try to buy these feeders that are squirrel proof as advertised, it never seems to work. They always figure out a way to get there. But I think what Christine mentioned earlier with the urban wildlife. You really have to. Everybody's backyard is different. You're going to attract different species. And if it becomes a problem for you, it's best to just remove the food source. Really. I
Yeah,
mean, you want to
occasionally I
observe your
do that.
birds, but yes, yes. And so also, if maybe you don't have to remove the entire food source, maybe you just have to change the food type. So pigeons will be attracted to certain types of seeds, whereas other bird species would prefer very, very small seeds. And so maybe if you change the kind of food that you have in there, you'll attract more desirable birds.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the downside of feeding the cute little
Yes,
birds.
you never know what you're going to get, what else you're going to get. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So, and you said that if you go to the eBird site, I can make a list of explain that, like what we can get from that eBird site on what we're looking at in our backyards.
Sure. So the eBird site is amazing. You could put in your zip code, you could put in your city, and it will generate a list of birds that are more commonly seen in your area. And you can click on it. You can see pictures of them. It'll help you ID them if you don't know what they look like. You can create your own list if you have your own, avian goals, birds that you
Yeah.
want to see. You can create your own list and keep track of things that way. They also they also advertise different events related to avian conservation as well. So it's just a variety of information on that website. So it's amazing. You can even query like certain bird species and see different charts of when you would expect to see most of them here, when they would kind of come and go if they're migratory. So it's a great website.
So we have a
And
question.
we have a question. Christine, you want to read it?
So do you have any tips for trying to attract owls? We live in a wooded area.
Yes. So if you want to see, so one thing that I've done in the past with attracting owls, and you kind of want to be careful with this, it's not something that you want to practice like if you want to attract birds to see them, it's best to just kind of let it occur naturally. But here on Fort Hood, we do utilize playbacks, which is a recording of different bird species, and so they're attracted to that recording, and they'll kind of fly in. But birds are very curious about what's going on in their territories and in their areas. They can be very territorial. So if they hear a playback of a bird that shouldn't be there, they'll come and try and investigate what's going on. But that's something that we utilize for research purposes. And it's not something that we widely recommend just for recreational use. So that's one way to draw them in. But owls are tough. They're very secretive and nocturnal beings. And so if you want to attract owls, I would recommend, if you're very interested in owls and wanting to see them more, I would highly recommend you email or message the folks at the integrative management team, because they have worked with owls in the past, and they will be able to give you the best advice on how to interact with owls in a safe and ethical way.
Yeah, and the Facebook page is Fort Hood AIM, AIM team. So if you do a search of that, that will lead you directly to our biologists, and you can send a message to them there.
Yeah, don't attract the great horned owls though.
Yeah,
They're
especially if you
really
have
big.
pets.
Yeah,
Especially
and
if
they
you
will take your animals.
yes, yes. You if you start attracting owls for the wrong reasons, you're gonna have a handful of trouble. So, but if you contact them, they're amazing. They know all the things. So
Yeah, cool, cool. Any other questions, Alyssa? Not anymore. I encountered a Mississippi kite in on the other side of 35. Not encountered, but I thought there was an eagle in my backyard, and somebody told me it was a kite. And I've seen them here as well. Is that like in the hawk species, or is that just a harmless little bird? But it's a big
no,
bird.
it is considered a bird of prey. Yes, yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
Okay, so I should run away.
No, 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 no. You can observe them from afar.
Just don't
I
try to
don't know.
rescue it and
Yeah,
try to have it
yes,
as your little pet and
yes,
be like, here, birdie.
yes.
No. I look up and I tell the birds, dudes, look up. Hi. So so anyway. Um, well, this has been, I love having you guys. Y'all have so much information, and I love the what you're doing for the environment at all times. For our community, for on the Fort Hood base, for our environmental science and well-being. And I have completely enjoyed every one of you guys' visits with us. And we do hope that we can continue this partnership. You guys are like so smart over there.
Thank
Well, we
you.
really enjoy the opportunity to share our knowledge and our experience, beyond the Fort Hood installation, beyond the gates. So to really reach out to not only Central Texas, but with these virtual platforms, it really helps us to have more of a global impact. So we thank you for this opportunity to not only educate the community, but also students all across CTC.
Yes, and it really
Awesome.
does it takes a village, as they say, because we all have such a wide variety of skill sets and information that we all share with each other, and so it's great to be able to just talk to your coworkers and find out all the cool stuff that's going on.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. And I just want to remind everyone that we have a full 2023 schedule already on our website. And we have some amazing stuff for next year: military history, horse ownership. We are going to do invasive plant species. We've pretty much done a wide range of stuff, but we're always looking for new ideas for events. anything in any realm. We're always excited to do it. So make sure that you check out our events page. Make sure that you check out our Fort Hood Partners Facebook and everything that they've got going on. And continue this environmental science. You guys have learned everything there is to know about environmental science this year. And we hope you guys will take that opportunity and grow from it. So awesome. Well, you guys, thank you once again, and we will see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you.
All right, bye bye. And
Merry
Alyssa, if
Christmas.
you will take us out. Thank you.